Hebrews chapter 7. I love this chapter. I love how it exalts Jesus as a great high priest in such a supreme and awesome way compared to anything that Jews had seen before. As a matter of fact, I love the whole book of Hebrews. I love how the author just weaves the story all the way through about how supreme Jesus is. He's better than angels. He's better than Moses. He's better than the priests of the type of Aaron and all his descendants that the Jews were familiar with. He's going to be better, the beginning author of a new covenant that's better than the old covenant, the Old Testament that they had had. This was mind-blowing to the Jews, how beautiful our Jesus is and how permanent and lasting and enduring his way of truth is. We need to believe in him and follow after him to enter into that rest through belief. We'll see in chapter 7 how Jesus is a priest after the order of Melchizedek. Who was Melchizedek anyway? He was very unusual. He was a priest at the time of Abraham, but he was also a king. A king priest was a very unusual thing in the Israelite history. It's talked about in Psalm 110. David talked about it and talked about how the Messiah, he would be a priest forever in the order of Melchizedek. And in Zechariah 6:13, we see that too, this reference to the Messiah being a king and a priest united in one. That this was way superior to the type of priesthood of Aaron and his sons. And this chapter will tell us that's one way that Jesus is like Melchizedek, because he's a king. Melchizedek's name even meant king of righteousness and king of peace. And then Jesus is like Melchizedek because he is a king for priest forever. He does not have beginning or ending. There's no listing of his genealogy and the end of his days. And in the Bible account of Melchizedek, it doesn't list his genealogy. It doesn't tell you how long he lived or when he died. And this was a prefiguring of Jesus Christ. Also, we find out that Abraham, when he had come back from getting plunder, he gave a tithe, a tenth of all that he had to Melchizedek. We know that in the Old Testament system that the priests did not pay tithes. And I love how the writer of Hebrews says, you could say that even Levi, who collects this tithe, all the Levites was the priestly tribe, that those Levites, you could say that they paid their tithe through Abraham because they were still unborn, yet in Abraham's loins, in the time when Abraham was paying a tenth, a tithe, to this priest after the order of Melchizedek. So that's pretty cool. And then also Melchizedek is like Jesus in the fact that Melchizedek blessed Abraham. Abraham was the one who had the promises given to him, but Melchizedek was even greater than Abraham, even greater than the one who received the promises. Melchizedek was great, and he blessed Abraham. And our Jesus, he is greater. He is the one who actually gives the promises. So we also see in verses 18 and 19, I love these verses. It says, the former regulation, it's set aside because it was weak and useless, for the law made nothing perfect. We know the law was a beautiful thing. We know that the law was preparatory to all that was coming, but the law couldn't give someone the ability to fulfill its demands. The law couldn't provide an atonement necessary for everybody who violated the law. So the law is set aside and a better hope is introduced by which we draw near to God. And it was not without an oath. Priests could become a priest without an oath, but Jesus became a priest with an oath. And he quotes that oath from Psalm 110 about the Lord has sworn and will not change his mind. You're a priest forever. And because of this oath, Jesus has become the guarantee of a better covenant. And that's what we'll see in chapters 8 through 10, this better covenant. It's even better than the old covenant, the Old Testament. Again, I'm sure the Jews, their minds were blown. Wow, this is just amazing stuff. Hebrews chapter 7. This Melchizedek was king of Salem and priest of God Most High. He met Abraham returning from the defeat of the kings and blessed him, and Abraham gave him a tenth of everything. First, his name means king of righteousness. Then also, king of Salem means king of peace. Without father or mother, without genealogy, without beginning of days or end of life, like the Son of God, he remains a priest forever. Just think how great he was. Even the patriarch Abraham gave him a tenth of the plunder. Now the law requires the descendants of Levi, who became priests, to collect a tenth from the people, that is, their brothers, even though their brothers are descended from Abraham. This man, however, did not trace his descent from Levi, yet he collected a tenth from Abraham and blessed him who had the promises. And without doubt, the lesser person is blessed by the greater. In the one case, the tenth is collected by men who die, but in the other case, by him who is declared to be living. One might even say that Levi, who collects the tenth, paid the tenth through Abraham, because when Melchizedek met Abraham, Levi was still in the body of his ancestor. If perfection could have been attained through the Levitical priesthood, from the basis of it the law was given to the people, why was there still need for another priest to come, one in the order of Melchizedek, not in the order of Aaron? For when there is a change of the priesthood, there must also be a change of the law. He of whom these things are said belonged to a different tribe, and no one from that tribe has ever served at the altar. For it is clear that our Lord descended from Judah, and in regard to that tribe, Moses said nothing about priests. And what we have said is even more clear if another priest like Melchizedek appears, one who has become a priest not on the basis of a regulation as to his ancestry, but on the basis of the power of an indestructible life. For it is declared, "You are a priest forever in the order of Melchizedek." The former regulation is set aside because it was weak and useless, for the law made nothing perfect. And a better hope is introduced, by which we draw near to God. And it was not without an oath. Others became priests without any oath, but he became a priest with an oath when God said to him, "The Lord has sworn and will not change his mind. You are a priest forever." Because of this oath, Jesus has become the guarantee of a better covenant. Now, there have been many of those priests, since death prevented them from continuing in office. But because Jesus lives forever, he has a permanent priesthood. Therefore, he is able to save completely those who come to God through him, because he always lives to intercede for them. Such a high priest meets our need, one who is holy, blameless, pure, set apart from sinners, exalted above the heavens. Unlike the other high priests, he does not need to offer sacrifices day after day, first for his own sins and then for the sins of the people. He sacrificed for their sins once for all when he offered himself. For the law appoints as high priests men who are weak, but the oath which came after the law appointed the Son, who has been made perfect forever.